Turning 63 and having worked over 35 years, corporate training and coaching had me reflect on the 3 pieces of best advice that I could give to someone younger. So if you want your life to be more meaningful and fulfilling, then go ahead and follow along. You won't hear the usual type of tips or advice, like focus on yourself or ask yourself what you value or think about what you want written on your tombstone. Nothing of the like. Instead, from all my experience, I find that these 3 pieces of advice will massively improve the quality of your life. And after watching this episode, I guarantee you will think differently about your life, about other people, and about the way you live. By the way, I'm Dentinger, a biopsychology, personality, and behavior expert. I'm American, but have been living in Europe since the mid-1980s. And in all these years, I've been coaching and training with one-on-one clients in over 20 countries of the world. And the methodology and advice that I'll be sharing today are fruit of both the coaching methodology that I created, as well as from hearing the challenges of people across the world. So let's dive in. From my perspective, there are these 3 things that will determine whether you live a life that's deeply fulfilling or one of frustration, regret, and a wasted life. And the worst part is that these 3 things, no one teaches you this. Not at school, not at home. So no matter how old you are right now, you might feel the pressure to have figured things out already, to have figured your life out. Well, I'm giving you these 3 pieces of advice so you don't have to spend decades trying to figure out life. The first piece of advice is to know the game. So let's use the metaphor that life is a game. And right now, you might not be winning as much as you want to, because the truth is, you might be unconsciously playing certain games that destroy you, your health, your well-being, your relationships, and you're not even aware of them. Many of the games in life I call power games. So when you're involved in them, you will be involved in power struggles. Now, like I said, I've spent over 35 years coaching and corporate training, and I've witnessed a lot of games. And they're these invisible things that are happening all around us at work, in relationships, and even in your own thoughts. So we're going to have fun in just a second, but I want to drive home the point of why this is an important piece of advice. Because if you don't see the games you're playing, most likely you'll be playing by someone else's rules, and most likely it will be a losing game. So let me walk you through the top games that I see. Let's call the first one muscle power. You know, the kid that was bullying you in 4th grade, or let's hope not, but a very authoritative, aggressive parenting style or relationship style. Someone throwing their weight around, getting a bit pushy. Or worse. So if you're playing the muscle game, realize you're making the other person feel small and scared, which is surely no way to build a solid relationship, because it's all about fear and intimidation. And if you've been sucked into a muscle power game, then ask yourself why you're still in it. Most likely because you're afraid and intimidated. And that's when it's best to seek help. Sooner or later, you will be involved in one of these type of power games. This piece of advice is so you are aware, so you don't get sucked into something that you're not interested in playing. The second game is flash the cash. You know, think about people using money to make others do what you want. I mean, that's a total power move. You know, it's like saying, I've got the gold, so I set the rule. And this makes things super uneven because we live in a world that's very economy-based. So if you're in this game, you might feel trapped or like you have to do things that you don't want to just because you need the financial support. And hey, look, because I've coached a lot of high-level people, don't think that everything that glitters is gold. Don't think that all those internet gurus and the people talking about all their millions of dollars, don't think necessarily that they're happy. Many of them have even sold their soul for success, which is why after 20 or 30 years, you see them all going on a soul-searching spiritual journey. Why? To get their soul back. Another couple power games are more emotional, like the guilt game, making someone feel guilty so they do again what you want. It's like saying, look what you made me do, just to get your way. It's a pretty easy button to push that creates a bunch of submissive people around you. Another one similar might be called walking on eggshells, where there's a certain amount of control based on your unpredictable mood. Or let's say it's your boss who's really moody and you're always tense, hoping he or she calls in sick so you can have a relaxing day at the office. Because the walking on eggshells power game kind of tactic keeps other people on the edge, creates power through emotional dominance. Like if I can keep you on the edge, you're not stable, but I am. But this whole thing drains everyone, like every one of these power games. And then there could be Mr. and Mrs. Right game, the person who shuts down everyone who disagrees with them. Probably smart talker, well-informed, and again, it makes people around them feel quite tiny. It's an intellectual game. The person who knows the most is the winner. I mean, there are others. I don't know if this is becoming painful or funny. Comment below with your reflections and thoughts. And because I see these games, I'm very detached. I laugh about the games because they're so predictable in the human being. So the younger you are with this first piece of advice, the more aware you can become. So you don't play them and you don't get sucked into playing them and co-participating in them. Because really, a lot of these games aren't any different than a 2 or 3-year-old doing temper tantrum. But hey, I see them in team building where the average age is 35 to 40. There are other games like the flirt game, using sexual charm or charisma to persuade someone to do something. Or there's the title drop, either you throwing around your title or job role or education level, thinking that that's what's going to get people to listen to you. But nowadays, a lot of people are smartening up and they're looking for more genuine relationships, more real and authentic people that are just people without all those extra layers of games, is what I call them. So being that this is sort of the way life is. It's not about judging people who play the games because they're only fruit of their choices and decisions, of maybe their upbringing, of what they're imitating, who they're imitating, realizing that they're in a trap just as much as we all are in other different ways. My advice is to be aware of the games and call them out for what they are. Be responsible if you are playing power games. Call out yourself if you are playing power games. Invite someone who is to watch this video or listen to this episode. So since we will all be involved in certain power games in certain moments of our life, when you're aware of them, you don't get sucked into them, which means they don't drain your energy. You might temporarily play a game because it serves purpose to get you to the next level. But I still recommend you don't. Play you in your way. Who you are is what I specialize in, who you are and your personality. And when you are real, you don't need these games. You just show up the real you, and that in itself invites others to be real too. So to close off this first piece of advice, remember, this is not about the hate. It's not about rebelling against the games. It's not about the negativity. It's stepping back, being an observer, and in a certain way, simply laughing that that's the level of consciousness that so many people have, and stand back and even laugh like that's where we are as a human race. Well, you actually might want to cry about it, but hey, be a part of playing a more real game. And now the second piece of advice, which is possibly the most important, is to know the brain. Know your brain. Why? Because the brain runs a lot of the show. In my specialization in biopsychology, personality behavior, we have a saying: where people are in their brain is how they will behave. Where you are in your brain is how you will behave. So the power games, where do they belong in the brain? They belong to the animal brain, the reptilian brain, the lizard brain, the most ancient region of the brain that's all programmed for survival. Survival of the fittest. Sound like anything you know. The importance of being strong, being the alpha, having territory. So when you know your brain and you can observe your behavior, you can understand that your brain in 1,000th of a second, if you're in the animal region, is perceiving through the nervous system threat. And it's having you fight or flight or freeze or fawn. And if automatically you get into the power games, that means most likely you are in fight. You become aggressive, defensive, in the power struggle, full on. Or you might feel weaker and threatened, so you flight, you run away, you feel like the underdog, you feel like a victim, you deny what's going on, you feel helpless, or you freeze, but that's usually in a situation trauma that your brain will isolate the neurons connected to that emotional pain, and then you are oblivious of what's actually going on. That's what the freeze is about. Or animal brain, observe your behavior, will have you do the fawn, which is the big old cutesy eyes, like, look at how tiny I am, don't hurt me. And if you look around and you hear the stories about the road rage, you gotta think that a lot of people are living and behaving through the filter of only what their animal region of their brain perceives. This is why it's important to know the brain, because like I said, in 1,000th of a second, which is something that you can't control with any mindfulness practice or changing limiting beliefs, it happens automatically. Another thing that happens automatically is what I call the automatic brain, which is the limbic system. It's your emotional roller coaster. And in 1/10 of a second, which is again so fast that you don't even perceive it, you're already in the drama. You're feeling the emotions and acting in the same way over and over and over. Patterns of behavior, they might say in psychology. You see, the brain, when you know the brain is programmed to run on low expenditure of energy. For the brain, as an organ which has a lot of stuff to do to keep you alive, the easiest thing is the 1,000th of a second commanding movement so you stay in the animal region. Low expenditure of energy for the brain. And so again, for the brain, if it can command you to move based on 1/10 of a second in the limbic system, that's what it's going to do. Your brain considers your survival, which means it doesn't want to waste energy on thinking about things. It wants you to react fast. It commands you to react fast. So when you know the principles of the brain and you can be an observer of yourself, then you realize you can pause and say, oh my gosh, I'm such an animal today. Or, oh my gosh, I'm on the emotional roller coaster today. And then of course, when you know yourself and your personality, then you have a better chance of accessing who you are in the frontal lobe. That's being human. That's living your potential as a human being, because everything below the frontal lobes is robotic, repetitive, same old behavior, and or out in the jungle, and only the strongest survive. So when you know your brain and you consciously realize, oh wow, I solved that problem so easily. Oh wow, I was in flow the whole time working on this project. That's being consciously aware that you were operating from the seat of your personality, of your talents in the frontal lobes, and that you want to repeat. That way, higher cognitive ability, being in the right hemisphere for a big picture imagination, being in the left hemisphere for the plan and the strategy and the doing, helps you live an overall better life, because everything below that, again, cannot take place anymore when your default mode is to your frontal lobe. That's why this second piece of advice: know the brain, know your brain, know where you are behaving from in the brain. And if it's causing pain to yourself or others, energy drain to yourself or others, then get yourself up to the frontal lobe ASAP. Which leads me to the third piece of advice: know time. Value your time. And this, again, is not something you will hear from other people in their tips. It's not about a productivity hack. It's not about smart goals. It's not about blocking out time. It's about knowing time and having a relationship with time. In a lot of cultures, especially where I come from, in America, where there's a saying, time is money. With this overall philosophy of living, there's significant pressure to be productive and very efficient with time. But there's a certain societal expectation that can foster the type of feelings that you're always racing against the clock. It's the adversary. It reinforces this notion, instead of time being a resource, it's an enemy that you have to beat, that you have to control, that you have to manage. My suggestion with no time is to befriend time. So an exercise I do with my clients about time is to draw a triangle. And in that triangle, there is you, there is the desire, idea, project, and then there's time. So when you realize time is part of a co-creation, you get time on your side. When you consider time like friend that's going to help you realize this project, you see, a lot of people live in a space of synchronicity where they're the right person at the right time, at the right moment, in the right place. What brings in and attracts synchronicity into your life is this co-creation process. Let's say that you would personify the project you want to create. Usually, projects are like children because they come from you. There's something inside of you that you produce. We're here to be creative. We have the ability to procreate, but even our projects in life are procreation. So you who have the creative idea, and this idea starts to have a life of its own because it comes out of you. What supports this project coming to fullness, growing, is time. So having a relationship with time as a friend and personifying time and asking time, now this might seem silly, set up the plan that works the best for the maturity of me and the project, because a lot of people want things and they push, but guess what? Somehow it's like it's not the right time, like the divine time is not there, because those people want to have the deadline already. Terrible word. Like the completion or finishing of something makes something wither and die instead of a maturing or a completion date. So this final piece of advice in this co-creation process with time is to respect it like you respect a person, which means value it like you value a person, which means don't waste it on stupid stuff. Time is the only limited resource that you have. And this is not to create anxiety and stress about this limited resource. It's an invitation to bring time in as a player on your team, to ask time, make me more mature so this project can accelerate in its growth. Give me flashes of information so I can put this product out when the timing is best, because time, you also are part of the recipe of success. You are also part of the recipe of happiness and fulfillment and meaning. So in all these years of coaching and training, I've just seen so many people stressed by time. When the click with this relationship with time, when it can change, you can be a part of a flow of synchronicity. where your efforts and actions are less about the pushing and the doing, but more about the inviting in. You know, when you engage in very enjoyable activities, how time flies. Or when you're bored, or when you're sick, those days go on and on. It's easy to understand that time is even just a perception. Sure, the sun comes up and it sets every day. That would register time in our biorhythm. But tying these three pieces of advice together, when you value your time and you're operating from a higher part of your brain, your innate intelligence, your innate talents and strengths, and applying those in a game that you're playing to live a fulfilling life, not the power games and not the lower brain functions, then this is how to live a more meaningful existence for you, and also by being a presence on planet Earth to contribute to the greater good. So I hope these pieces of advice, age-old over 60 wisdom, helped you, as I promised at the beginning, to have a different perspective on life, on yourself, on the way life works, to become more aware of what doesn't work, that needs improvement, and how to participate in being part of this changing world, rapidly changing world, to making it a better world for everyone. I'd love to hear your takeaways. Comment below what you enjoyed the most from this episode. Like and subscribe to my channel as I'm new on this journey on YouTube, and share this with someone who might need a little bit of advice and hope that it's possible to create a better life when you're aware of the games, when you're aware of your brain and your behavior, and when you're aware of time. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.